Yeah, I think we've done all the setting up we need to. Bryan Singer's back in the director's chair. Simon Kinberg's back in the writers. They have chairs as well.
Sure they do.
All the same stars are back. They're melding the stars between First Class and the original trilogy.
Yeah, hell of an achievement to try and. I mean, I can't think of any other franchise that's really done this before. I mean, there's only so many franchises in the world that actually have different eras, you know, prequels and sequels and that sort of stuff. But to be able to tie together all the main actors from both universes is a pretty big deal. So this film was always very ambitious, and we're going to talk about now whether they pulled that off or not.
That's right. So this is X-Men Days of Future Past. We don't normally use trailers as clips, but I think that this one is particularly succinct and will set up the entire plot for you. So here we go.
Professor?
You're gonna find this hard to believe.
I was sent here for you.
From the future?
50 years from now.
Could you give me that one more time, please?
Stay with me.
In the beginning, the Sentinels were just targeting mutants. Then they began targeting everyone. They've come a long way to guide us, to bring us together. The X-Men. We need your help.
Tell whoever it was that sent you that I'm busy.
The person who sent me was you.
Dun, dun, dun. So, the basic plot, as convoluted as it is Wolverine is sent back through time to prevent the assassination of a scientist who is creating mutant hunting sentinels that threaten to wipe out mutants in the future. Mutants and humans, incidentally.
Does this story ring a bell? Someone going back in time to prevent a war where the robots wipe out the humans.
Yeah, there are tinges. Sarah Connor in being involved here, and that's fine.
No, that's fine. I don't want to start off too negatively.
No, of course not.
I'm just going to go first really quickly.
Sure.
I really enjoyed this, and I didn't think I was going to.
That's cool.
Yeah, because as I've said, I have not really properly enjoyed an X-Men film so far. I'm not sure whether it's my sort of lack of knowledge of the characters and the relationships and so on that meant that I could turn a blind eye to maybe some retconning that they're doing for better or worse, or some nonsensical plotting here or there. Because it is, the more you think about it, the less things start to tie together. But I guess that's the way with any time travel film. But just from a general filmmaking point of view, from someone that is not unfamiliar or just not a fan of X-Men, I found it to be pretty damn enjoyable. And this is the first time I felt that there really was just a proper sense of fun. And like there are some scenes with Quicksilver who manages to steal the film at points. Particularly great one involving an escape in slow motion, and that's one of the best action scenes I've seen in a long time. And so yeah, just very quickly, overall I really, really enjoyed it, but I am curious to see how it stands up in the universe overall.
Just mentioning your Terminator connection there, although you are correct, and it's a very similar concept to the Terminator films, the comic book this is based on, Days of Future Past, was actually published before Terminator was written.
Oh, so, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, the comic itself, even though it was only 2 issues long, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. That's, 50 pages?
Something like that.
50, 60 pages?
But yeah, it apparently was quite revolutionary at the time, but obviously Hollywood has produced films since then that have been, using similar elements, so it's not as groundbreaking now as it may have been back in the day.
Okay. That is worth noting then, that it came before Terminator, because it's funny having a plot set up like that is so blatantly from one of the most famous sci-fi movies of all time.
Yep.
But yes, then obviously it's not. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so it's interesting you point out that you don't have the sort of love of the franchise, love of the characters as some people do. So you managed to disentangle yourself from the retconning and just the connectivity to the other films, I guess. It wasn't such an issue for you. You were more focusing on the film at hand.
Almost going in with a blank slate.
Okay.
I mean, I have seen these other films, but they don't weigh in my mind, and I don't know the story very well. So.
It's interesting because I really wanted to enjoy this film, but the thing that kind of stopped me at the end of the day was the fact that I was so up with what happened in the other films, and the other films were so intrinsic to this one. By their admission, I mean, they built a lot of this storyline based on what had happened in other films, but then they also discarded what they didn't need, and they just continually contradicted themselves, and basically, I spent a lot of time not really focusing on just, character motivations and just relationships because I was constantly thinking about, well, hang on, what about this and that, and how can you do that if you mean this? And there was just...
you're referring to the storylines of the previous movies? Or
I am, because... And that's because they reference them. I mean, if they...
Right.
I was talking to our friend James after we saw this, and he was saying this should have been a standalone film. It shouldn't have referenced the other films at all, and it would have been much better. And I completely agree. I mean, the film itself, I think, is actually a really good film, and I had a good time in certain scenes with certain things. I think it's a great film.
It's very enjoyable, yeah? Like, it rolls along well. And
it does, but unfortunately I couldn't be completely present with that experience because I was constantly worrying about how this was affecting the other films and how the other films were affecting this one. The thing is, we're spoiled with the Marvel Universe, right? Well, I'm talking about Marvel Studios universe. They managed to make these cohesive films with these various characters that somehow all work together to make a continuing narrative. And it's quite phenomenal, and not many people have done it, but for whatever reason, they're pulling it off, and they're doing a really good job. Now, other studios, especially ones within the Marvel Universe, are trying to do the same thing. X-Men have actually been pretty successful until now of tying all their films together, no matter how different they are. I mean, the Wolverine, which we didn't talk about, actually does a really good job of legitimizing things that happened in X-Men 3, which is a terrible film. Right? So the death of Jean Grey is a big part of the character development in the Wolverine. So that all seems to work out pretty well, despite the fact they're very different films. Whereas in this film, it just it has just these major gaping plot holes which they just don't address, and they just steamroll over things. And the way the film resolves itself is just grating, and I couldn't... The ending was the most disappointing part of this film for me. It ruined anything that could have been good about it.
So we'll save the ending for spoilers.
Unfortunately, I can't get into specifics, but...
Is there anything you can get into specifics about plot things that they're just blatantly ignoring?
Okay. So this film is set in like 10 years in the future, roughly.
73, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the future part of the film.
Oh, you mean... Oh, sorry, the future part. Yeah,
so about 10 years in the future.
Right, yeah.
So the stinger for the Wolverine film involved Magneto and Professor X turning up and recruiting Wolverine to fight against this threat, which apparently they didn't do anything for like 10 years, and then they start fighting against the threat in the future.
Oh, I see, okay.
Which is kind of weird. Now, it's also kind of weird that Professor X is even alive because he died in X-Men 3. So there was something where in the end credit scene of X-Men 3, he turns up in someone else's body, like a coma patient's body. Mm-hmm. He projects his consciousness into that body, but does the body look like him? Did he make the body turn out to be exactly the same as him, and also in a wheelchair? Like, what the hell? Like, they don't explain that at all.
Okay.
There's no explanation as to why Professor X is back. There's also no explanation as to why Magneto has his powers, because once again in X-Men 3 he loses his powers, although there is a hint towards the end of the film that he might be getting them back. But still, that just renders the entire conceit of X-Men 3 is there's a cure for mutanism. Like, there's a cure that makes people lose their mutant powers.
Right.
So if and Magneto gets injected with the cure at the end, and he loses his powers, and the bad guy is defeated. But if he just gets his powers back, that means that entire plot is redundant, because everyone gets their powers back after a while, yeah?
Okay.
I know this is really uber nerdy of me, but I mean, all these things not getting explained just raises more questions for this film, which it starts it off on rocky ground.
So this is, most of those problems, though, are relating back to X-Men 3, and from what I've gathered, talking to a few people online over the last day since we've seen it, is that that was a good thing, is that ignoring the worst movie in the trilogy and basically wiping that movie out of existence and trying to create their own version.
Yeah, but you can't ignore some things and embrace others. I mean, the fact that Jean Grey is dead,
they're picking and choosing from X3. They're not,
which is unacceptable, I think, because you either accept the fact that film just is not in continuity and just ignore it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but the fact is that they make a big deal of the fact that Jean Grey was an important part of Wolverine's life, and now she's gone, and he really misses her, and it's a big part of his character that he's had this lost love, which was a huge part of X-Men 3. But to ignore all the other things that happen in X-Men 3 is... like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. So these things were niggling away at me, because I just assumed, being a time travel film, you could simply explain these things away. I didn't care how convenient it was if they explained it. I just wanted them to explain something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they just chose to just... Okay, so here's the thing. So when Matthew Vaughn was supposed to direct this film initially, and he walked. So this is the second time he's walked from an X-Men film. And that's why Bryan Singer stepped in. But Matthew Vaughn's idea was a direct sequel to First Class, and it sounded a lot more cohesive. It was still a time travel film.
It was going to borrow from this Days of Future Past story.
Exactly. It was still called Days of Future Past. It
Okay.
was based on the storyline, but there was very little connection to X-Men 1, 2, and 3. So when Singer came in, he thought it'd be great to tie them all together, which is a great idea in theory. And I'm glad that they tried, and I'm glad the other actors came back, and it was a very ambitious project. But honestly...
It's weird because at that point in time, you would be thinking, this is when a lot of studios would just say, can it, we're starting again, it's too messed up,
Yeah.
and people have mixed feelings about it. It's a muddled up universe, we
Yeah.
want to wipe it out and start again.
And they successfully did that with First Class. And I feel that Singer has just come along and undone all the good work of First Class by tying it into inferior films like X-Men 3. It's all very confused now. So the other thing is there's no explanation as to why Magneto and Professor X are friends. I mean, they tried to kill each other in X-Men 3 once again, and they're just mates now. There's no mention of that. I'm assuming it's because the Sentinels rose up and threatened mutants, so they decided to work together, but we don't get that told to us at any point. Here's the other problem with the Sentinels. There's a thing in this 70s set
So
section.
the Sentinels are the big bad in this.
Sorry, that they are these drones, these Terminator-like drones that are programmed to kill mutants initially, but apparently they also kill humans later in the future, but that's irrelevant. The point is they are there to kill mutants, and they are created back in the 70s. So the major problem with this is it puts forward that these Sentinels were unveiled back in the 70s to kill mutants, and yet they were never mentioned in any of the other films.
Yeah.
So that's a problem from right away. I mean, if they were kept under wraps until, many years later, I could buy it. But the fact is there's a big show in this film in the 70s where they reveal them to the world as being mutant-killing machines, and yet they were never
so then
a problem.
they just disappeared for the next 30, 40 years.
Exactly. So that's...
Yeah, okay.
That just bugged me. So this is what I mean. I mean, it's one thing to ignore the films. I would love it if they just simply ignore those other films. But because they tried to have their cake and eat it, the whole time I was just trying to connect the dots, and they weren't connecting because this doesn't work.
So you could never get past that point. You can never get to a point where you could set it aside and try and enjoy it as a non-linear
I was trying the whole time, man. I really wanted to just enjoy the film for its own merits.
Okay.
But because they kept on reaching out and referencing those films, I couldn't separate. Now, let me try and focus on things that did work in this film.
I think there's a lot that does. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's. By no means is it a bad film. I think. Yeah. Even me going into it not liking this, I would say that it's a solid action movie.
Yeah.
It's an entertaining movie.
Yeah, I think it is.
If nothing else.
I just wish it was a standalone. So,
Well, yes, it's hard to. You don't want to think about it too much at
yeah,
times.
which is a problem because that's what they want you to do.
Yeah.
All right, so this film kicks off in the future, so about 10 years from now, when these Sentinels have just pretty much eradicated humanity, and they're just trying to hunt down these last few mutants. And there's this incredible action set piece where these Sentinels turn up, and they use the mutants' powers against them. So any sort of trick that the mutant throws at them, the Sentinels adapt and fight back in the opposite fashion. And it is just the most well-executed action sequence I've seen in a very long time. I was completely on the edge of my seat for the start of this film, and it was a really good sign that things were going to go well. I mean, like I said, eventually the plot mechanics just did my head in, and I couldn't possibly enjoy it like I wanted to, but nothing will take away that opening sequence, which I thought was just incredible.
It was very creative, yeah, and they go into that with you not really knowing the objective or the outcome,
And
that's
you
always
don't even
hard.
know these characters either. I mean,
No.
these are more or less new characters, with the exception of Ellen Page's character. We know her, Kitty Pryde, from the other films, but they're pretty much brand new mutants. You're learning their powers as you're watching them use them in fight scenes, but it's just such a great sequence.
Yeah, and it works really well. It's one of those. It kind of reminded me. I mean, I think the intro to The Dark Knight Rises is vastly superior from like a suspense hijacking kind of point of view. It's an incredible sequence, but you don't. It's incredibly unclear what's going on at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises with the whole plane thing, and they're transfusing blood, and you've got no idea
That's true, yeah.
what the hell is going on until you're about 3/4 of the way through the movie, and even then, it helps to go back. With this one, it was just kind of like it didn't really matter. It was just setting up the bad guys to show what they're capable of and how and just to show a creative creative action scene. I mean, they've started a fair few of the X-Men films like this with a battle where you're not really sure exactly what's going on.
Yep, X-Men 2 definitely starts off with
with that White
it
House.
doesn't give you anything. It just you just see a mutant trying to kill the president, and you just go, okay.
That's right, yeah, and it works. You just figure, well, it's the president, and he's trying to kill him. And it was a creative thing. So yeah, actually, it was quite kind of similar because they're there are a lot of similarities between the two. You know, the disappearing and reappearing. There's similarities between those action scenes. Yeah,
I kind of wish there was I loved the future world they created, and honestly, I would have preferred more of the film to be set in this future world. I mean, the Sentinels were just terrifying, and the way they fall out of those drop ships, and the way they've just got this hunter-killer mentality of just hunting down their prey and killing it. There's no reasoning with them. I mean, once again,
they
very
make
much
those T-1000 arms, the straight pointer arms.
Yeah, exactly.
Things.
They can do whatever. They can adapt to any scenario.
Yeah,
and they are just relentlessly terrifying. I just really wanted more of that sort of world and to see more of the destruction that they'd caused.
Yeah.
And
they're not even in it. I mean, they're in the beginning, and then the version that we get for them later on is the primitive version. So we never really see this initial. The current. The version, current, yeah, that's right. The current version where it is really incredible. That's an excellent big bad, and that big bad doesn't really happen much in the film.
Yeah, and apparently these Sentinels are pretty, persistent throughout the entire X-Men universe in the comics. They're always sort of there. They're brought in for certain storylines and whatnot, but they are a very common part of the X-Men universe. So we haven't seen them in the films yet. So this is the big reveal of the Sentinels. Right. And I think for me, it's one thing to bring them into this film. I'm okay with that, but to suggest they've been around since the 70s and no one's mentioned them until now is a huge retconning problem, because you can't just fix that. You can't just go, they were hunting mutants, but it was never a problem until today.
This is a problem that's sort of more inherent to the genre of time travel than it is probably for X-Men films themselves.
You're absolutely right. But when time travel films have these problems, they throw enough stuff at you to think about to distract you, and you're not worried about that sort of stuff. Like Terminator, Back to the Future, these sort of ones, you are given the premise of the time travel and you sort of get it, and then you've got an amazing story to follow, and you don't have time to stop and go, well, wait a minute, how could that be? Because obviously he would,
Okay.
For me, this film just threw up all this stuff, and it didn't give me enough to distract me from the issues of the time travel. There was because of these other films. And once again, if I had never seen an X-Men film, I think I would have enjoyed this a hell of a lot more.
Yeah,
it would have made much more sense because I would have had none of the baggage. Unfortunately, I brought all my nerd baggage with me because I thought that's what they were going to do. I thought they were going to pay off things from the other films and honor the fans. Instead, they said, all these other films, useless. Don't worry about them. Never, ever pay attention to those films because they're done.
This is really funny because what's ended up happening is that they've alienated fans and they've pleased someone like me that normally doesn't care.
It's kind of weird, yeah.
Because, I did not expect us to come out of this as me being the one that's more positive on the film overall.
And having said that, the fan response has been overwhelmingly positive as well. I mean, from what I've glanced at the internet, and I mean, this thing had a huge IMDb rating, like a 9.6, and then it went down to 9.4, and now it's at 8.9. But the fact is,
that's standard for the opening of a superhero
but really, like
film.
That high?
Actually, no, I guess 9.6 is incredibly high.
It's a lot of people giving it
10 high 8s and then give it a month to calm down until non-fans have seen it. But that is a high point. People have about half an hour before we started recording. I forgot I hadn't started fishing for opinions yet, so I asked very quickly for anyone to write in and say what they thought of the film. But the majority of people just wrote in saying it was excellent, one of the best in the franchise so far, incredible film. So a huge amount of praise coming in for it. A guy we talk to every now and then on Twitter, who I got to say I agree with his opinion most of the time. Lord Tobias said that it was very well acted and directed. The script had some huge plot holes and weak explanations. Yeah. And I reckon that does sum it up.
I do
well.
agree. It's one of those things though where one of the elements just overrides everything for me, and I can't appreciate the good because I'm so hung up on the bad. And I know it's my problem, and I'm glad that fans are enjoying it. I mean, that's great. It's annoying that I can't get past the issues.
Yeah. So, yeah, so some of the other things I liked about it, I guess, was this was the first time I properly enjoyed the Wolverine character. I've always found him kind of off-putting, I'm never really sure why. There's something about his presence that I just don't enjoy. I found him really entertaining in this film. I guess they managed to get the right amount of darkness and sarcasm, and he's such a belligerent character that doesn't get on well with others, but it seemed to work properly in this film. The relationship again between Magneto and Xavier works really well.
Not enough of it, I felt.
Not enough of it, because that seems to be throughout all the films. That's the best. That's the core, and they seem to stray from that every now and then. But I really like James McAvoy's performance, and even how they gave a stupid explanation as to this serum as to why he's walking and then not
stupid.
walking.
But that's fine. Honestly, McAvoy is the heart and soul of this film.
He's really good. He gives it a lot. He gives that character so much depth that you just don't get from Patrick Stewart's version. Because his version is such a do-gooder. He's the Nelson Mandela of X-Men.
He's never playing the main character though either. He's always peripheral. He's always just watching over his family and looking after things. I mean, McAvoy has the central role, and he has a chance to explore the character a bit more.
Yeah, you need some more depth.
Bring some darkness,
when I say that Nelson Mandela thing,
I know
he's of course he was a brilliant man and very admirable and all that. But when you have a character in this universe, you want more than white. You need black and white. You can't just have this ultimate do-gooder. So
making him essentially a drug addict was a really interesting choice.
It was very bold. No. And then I mentioned it very briefly at the beginning, but Quicksilver's role in this, and he's about to be played by Aaron Johnson in the second Avengers film.
God help us all.
I know. It's going to be weird. I don't mind the guy that much, but it is going to be odd because the guy that plays him in Days of Future Past, I thought he was brilliant. Did you enjoy his scenes, like the extraction from
Quicksilver. I loved it.
That slow-mo scene during the extraction.
With the escape is the highlight of the film, I think.
Easily,
really fantastic. You know, the only thing that I didn't like about this, and this is just stupid, but I felt bad that they got there first, because I always wanted to see that done in a Flash film, and this is just me being a DC fanboy.
Yes,
and just loving the character of the Flash. I thought that DC were going to get their act together and get a Flash film out in a couple of years, and it would be okay, and they'd be able to use this amazing technology to illustrate this incredible, unparalleled world. And now Marvel have got in there first and done it perfectly. I mean, it's going to be really hard to top that.
Yeah, because that's his power. He has exactly the same powers as Quicksilver. He'll be able to do exactly the same things.
That's going to
be tough.
That aside, because I feel that when the Flash film does happen, it will appear derivative, because they really nailed it in this film. I mean, I love the fact that his character
the Flash
was
is a series, not a.
I'm actually talking about
Justice League,
because they were going to make a film. So they still might. The Flash is a series, and but I don't think they'll have the money to do something like this on TV. But anyway, Quicksilver, his character being all edgy and just sort of being exasperated with things not catching up with him, it was really well done. I had no idea that guy was going to be good. I actually thought he was going to be bad. He was great.
He was very good. Peter Dinklage as well. This has to be a first where his size is never commented on. He's just simply a bad guy.
I think it's inherent to the character, though.
So is this a comic book thing?
No, I don't think. I don't even know if he's a comic book character. I just know that from reading interviews with Singer, he was cast because he is. He does have mutant qualities because he has the condition of dwarfism. So therefore, he has a chip on his shoulder, and he has to prove his position in life. Essentially, there was a very definite choice of choosing a dwarf actor to portray the role.
I just thought,
although it is not mentioned in the script, you're right.
It's never mentioned at all, and he is so damn good in it. Did you think it was good?
No, I thought he was wasted. Really?
Yeah, I thought that whenever he was in it, he had a proper command of the scene.
I just didn't think the character was very interesting, to be honest.
I guess that's I'm not sure. I thought that it was pretty effective. I just really admired that you can have a dwarf actor in a film and not actually have to. There was not one comment. No, it was just like he was just another character.
That is unusual. So I'll definitely give them that. The thing I did like about that character was he had sort of qualities of Ozymandias, because he was essentially trying to unite the world against a common enemy. So the idea of turning
from Watchmen.
Yeah, exactly. Like turning everyone against...
As if the only people listening now are not nerds. We've delved into
I should have explained that more thoroughly. So in the Watchmen comic, obviously Ozymandias is master... Oh, I'm giving away too much. Anyway, ignoring that, the Trask character is trying to portray the mutants as the enemy, so therefore nations around the world will stop killing each other, and he'll essentially achieve world peace by focusing hatred on the mutants. So he does have this twisted good intention at the heart of his character, which I did think was interesting, but I just don't think that it was really executed that well.
Okay. So there was a point where it did fall apart for me, though, and that, I guess, is... I should probably get into it in spoilers. It was towards the end, and the way it all resolved itself, the way the big final battle played out, didn't... By that point, it had lost me with its logic and so on.
Well, the end of the film is where it really affected the other films, and that's what I can't buy, because it just doesn't make any sense. Or if it does make sense, but it just disregards other things that you've cared about up until now for the last 15 years. So there's a lot of problems with how they chose to end it. So we'll get to that in spoilers, but I'm sure there's
sure. Well, I think my arguments then in spoilers are going to be completely different to yours, because mine don't relate to the other films, just simply in the way that it played itself out.
All right. Well, on the subject of Wolverine, without getting into spoilers, it's funny that you point... It's very weird. Like, we seem to have the opposite opinion about this film, but I thought there was too much Wolverine, and I didn't think he was interesting at all, and I usually like the character. I think I've got to a point of just genuine Wolverine fatigue, and I'm just over him being the central character in X-Men films. I mean, with the exception of First Class, the best X-Men film, he is always the central character. Like, every X-Men film is about Wolverine. And then they made 2 solo films for him as well, you know.
I didn't find him any good in the others, though.
No, I'm not saying he's great. I'm just saying he's always the focus. Like it's like the guy, the studio suits are just like, well, we've got to make him the most important character because he's the one everyone knows. And they don't have the balls to just simply focus on other characters for more than a few scenes before bringing Wolverine back into it. So Wolverine gets sent back in time to warn his past friends about a certain threat, okay? Mm-hmm. In my mind, his job is done as soon as he's warned them. There's no need for that character to stick around. Instead, they make him he's constantly there in every scene. He's not always doing things. In fact, by the end of the film, he's completely useless, but he's still around. He's still a character just being there. I was just like, what? Why are you so keen to have him in the script? Like, honestly, he can go now. He can die even. Who cares?
But
just get him out of the way.
But surely it's not enough for him to just come back and say to the people, don't do this.
But what does he do, though? Like, think about it. What does he actually affect after that?
Muscles?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't know.
You don't really need him in the script. I'm just saying from a pure screenwriting point of view, as soon as he's done his job, and I think they just wanted him there because he's a recognizable face and people seem to like Wolverine. I just felt that he was kind of pointless after a while.
Okay.
And I was just bored of it. I would have much preferred to once again, the focus be on Fassbender and McAvoy and have their characters be the driving force of the film, and just to put Wolverine to the side because he's not that important right now.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
Okay, so other things, you know how I was saying how much I love the 60s vibe of the First Class. I think the 70s vibe of this one was a little bit too forced. It didn't work as well for me. It felt like they were trying to just completely riff on 70s, blaxploitation films or whatever. They was just doing really almost like sketch comedy 70s, like taking the most obvious concepts of the 70s and throwing it on there. I didn't like it at all. However, the look of it was still really sharp. I loved when there were sequences when it cut to Super 8 footage of just normal citizens filming crazy stuff going on.
That was great. Very Zaprudery.
Yeah, but also very similar to how Godzilla conducted their action sequences by taking it from the perspective of normal individuals in the crowd. Like, I thought that was really grounded, and I really liked that style. So... Look, I really loved a lot of this film, but as just being the nerd I am, I just can't get past how much it tramples over the other films and doesn't connect with them at all. So
it's funny with that the stylistic thing of the era that you're setting it in, because I can't remember who the director was or the screenwriter that said it, but someone was talking about trying to place these period films, and instead of taking the music from that year and the looks from that year, you take it from the looks 5 years ago, before that.
Totally.
And so that's I think that's one of the reasons why when I was when I was watching this, it felt more. It felt like it was trying to propel itself forward too far into the 70s when it really was 73, so they're coming out of the 60s and they're yet to really establish a strong style of the 70s. So yeah, it was weird because it was trying to be too on the nose.
No,
too
you're
on
right.
point.
I didn't even think of that, but you're absolutely right. It's like late 70s, the whole film.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's supposed to be 73.
Well, that's right. It's 73, but we have a fully established 70s vibe when really it should be the combination of fashions and styles from the 60s through to 73. Like it's not everyone is up to the week with fashion,
which is not a major problem, but I mean,
it's so insignificant.
Yeah.
But that's
So look, I guess I'm not going to be able to really vent until I get to the really independent plot points that just really got my goat. But overall, unfortunately, I couldn't just enjoy it for what it was, despite the fact that it was a pretty well-structured film on its own. If you ignore the other films, it works really well. The performances are top-notch. I had a good time, especially with certain set pieces, but there's certain things that I just can't forgive, which we'll get to soon.
Yeah, that's fine. I think overall there's definitely a good time to be had, and I am amazed that I'm saying that, because before we went in, I was saying that if this is no good, I am reserving the right to never see another X-Men movie, and regardless of what our show schedule is in the future, I will talk about something else, and you can go see. It'll be much like the second version of the
second Hobbit.
Hobbit. Yeah, it's just I'm giving up. It doesn't matter if it's great. I won't even know. So yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable. So okay, in the scheme of all the X-Men films, then where does this one sit for you? Because for me, this is at the top.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I kind of have to just add a caveat that if we ignore the fact that it ruins other films, it's probably my second or third favorite. It's a great film.
First Class and X2, or
yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Actually, First Class and the Wolverine. I like the Wolverine better than X2. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's up there. It's a really solid film, but I can't forgive what it has done to the other films.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so before we're going to wrap this up. So now, as I mentioned a few times already, please, if you've seen the film already, stick around. We are going to talk more about the nitty-gritty. But also out this week is The Babadook, which I really want to see, actually. I've heard a lot of great things about this horror film. Sounds like a psychological horror, really creepy. Really good stuff.
It does, yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
We've also got The Trip to Italy. Now, you and I are both fans of The Trip, so I'm pretty excited to see the sequel.
Oh, you mean this is The Trip?
You didn't even know?
No, I didn't. Oh, I knew that. I heard months ago they were
Rob
making
Bryan,
something.
Steve Coogan, they go to Italy this time.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I'd love to. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Oh, that'd be great. It probably wouldn't be good for a review. It would just be saying how awesome their impersonations are.
Pretty much. We'd just be having a good time. No, I think it's probably not going to be a feature review, but we'll definitely check it out.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize it was out yet. Okay.
Out on Blu-ray this week is Inside Llewyn Davis and The Wolf of Wall Street, two heavy hitters from last year's Oscar. No, not really, actually. Inside Llewyn Davis was completely ignored.
Completely ignored.
Yeah.
Some would say rightfully so.
Yeah. I didn't actually think it was that great. But Wolf of Wall Street is a huge film in Scorsese's catalogue and definitely worth checking out if you're yet to do so.
Wonder if we're going to get the extended version. I have not looked into the release. Do you know if they...
I don't
because there
think
was
so.
talk...
Really? Was there?
Well, there was talk that eventually because Scorsese had to cut it down from 4 hours.
Yeah, I don't think
that we
so.
might get
maybe.
see this extra hour at some point.
Scorsese's not a director cut sort of guy.
No,
though.
that's right. Yeah, so it would be amazing if we got it. But.
So next week, we're actually not sure. I was going to ask you. Now's as good a time as any. I mean, what do you think?
I want to make an executive decision.
Yeah.
So, well, for the overall entertainment, read out the what are our choices, Tom?
Our choices next week: A Million Ways to Die, the Seth MacFarlane
A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Oh, thank you. What you said. The Seth MacFarlane comedy. So there's that. Director of Ted and of course Family Guy stuff. Maleficent, which is the Angelina Jolie live-action version of the bad guy from Sleeping Beauty?
Bad gal.
Like Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty?
Sleeping Beauty.
Okay, cool.
I think, yeah.
So it's a Disney film, and it looks pretty whacked. And of course, there's also Under the Skin, which is the much-talked-about ScarJo film where she plays an alien that comes to Glasgow and eats people.
Yeah, and some of it was filmed without the knowledge of people in the scenes.
Yep. What's your exact decision?
I'm putting my fist down. I'm saying Under the Skin.
Really?
Yeah, particularly because it looks like a fascinating movie. It's been incredibly divisive. It's been getting 5-star reviews, 1-star reviews, and also I thought that we did have to stick with blockbusters and big films, but after our episode of a couple of
Only
weeks ago
Lovers
on
Left Alive
Only
definitely
Lovers-
disprove that. Yeah.
the Jarmusch film said that apparently we can talk about slightly more indie films, and
Here's the
people
thing,
are
though.
okay with that.
All I've heard about Under the Skin is the less you know, the better. Like,
Yes.
can we really talk about it in a proper review without giving away too much?
Oh, so the whole time we might just be saying it is great, but we don't want to say too much.
Yeah, that's
about
what I'm
it.
worried about.
Yeah, well, do we have?
Oh, we'll talk about it. Through the
Yeah, I
week.
mean, I am torn between. I mean, A Million Ways to Die in the West doing a McFarlane comedy.
We might just end up saying this joke was funny, this joke wasn't funny.
It's hard to do. Yeah, that's right. But then Maleficent, I'm not sure that could go either way.
Yeah,
so-
it could be interesting. All right, well,
Who knows?
we'll talk more about that off air, behind the curtain
We'll
of
spare
the show.
you the. Yeah.
So, email, of course. Let us know what you guys think of X-Men Days of Future Past at podcast@silverscreensnobs.com or on Twitter. You can find us both there. Dave is at SSSnobs and I'm at let me try that again. At Snobs Podcast. That's me. That's my handle. And of course, you can find pretty much everything we've done at silverscreensnobs.com. Stick around for spoilers, and the rest of you guys, we'll see you next week. And we're back for spoilers for X-Men Days of Future Past. One question I wanted to ask, well, I've got a couple, but I'm just curious. This might just be something that I got confused about, but maybe you saw something different. Where did Mystique get a plastic gun at the end?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. But they showed... Didn't they show a bunch of people walking around with plastic guns?
Yeah, in the Pentagon sequence, like hours earlier.
Yeah.
Or days earlier in the film. I mean, she wasn't at the Pentagon. How did she get one of their plastic guns? Like, only the guards that were guarding Magneto in the Pentagon had plastic
Had those
guns.
fancy plastic guns.
So where did she pull hers from? It just seems like she's like, and now I've got this.
Yeah, I know
Because
it
the
was a
script
little.
demands
It was a little out of the blue. I don't know.
Okay, fine.
See, these are you're thinking too much.
Well, this is the thing. I all I could do was think about things that didn't work because I wasn't invested in the characters because the film was actively working against me.
Okay.
So my main issue with the film as a whole is the fact that when it wraps itself up and we essentially alter the past, but not just the recent past. We alter the past before the other films even took place. So what this film does is just simply eradicate every event that happened in the other X-Men films. And that is a major issue for me. Now, you could argue that maybe
You're talking about
things...
the clean beginning that they come back with at the end?
Yeah,
Is
I mean,
that-
they come back. I mean, this is where you missed X3, but in X3, most of those characters are dead. Beast dies, Jean Grey dies, Cyclops dies, Professor X dies. So Wolverine...
they're all dead.
Yeah, Wolverine wakes up and everyone's back, and it's like one of those awful cop out things, like the season of Dallas after they shot JR, and he wakes up in the shower and it's all a dream. Everyone's just like, "Wow, where you been?"
Dallas?
The TV show. Sorry, it's a weird reference, but it's famous for completely retconning an entire season because they killed off a main character and everyone hated the show. So they said it was a dream and they brought him back. This is
Right.
what this is like. They brought back everyone and it's just like, remember those things that happened in those films? They didn't actually happen. It's like, remember investing in those films and caring about those characters? Fuck you, audience. Those things never happened.
Yeah, okay. But isn't it a good thing that they're wiping out this film that everyone hates? That killed off all the characters unceremoniously?
But they've already legitimized it by paying such close attention to it in the Wolverine and stuff. I mean, they've accepted that these things have happened. I mean, they've embraced it. They've embraced the fact that Jean Grey died. Bringing her back, bringing everyone back just undoes everything. Because if we're expected to believe that X-Men 3 didn't happen, then in turn we have to believe that X-Men 2 and X-Men 1 didn't happen. Those events didn't happen. Why is Professor X still alive? Where's Magneto? Are they friends again? I mean, wouldn't they be enemies if there was no more Sentinels to rally the cause, like to join forces against? So wouldn't Magneto still be out there killing them? Like, what the hell? It raises all these questions and it doesn't answer any of them. In fact, it raises more questions.
Yeah. Okay. So would you rather that they started all over again, or that they just paid more attention to having to fit into these times? Like, would you have rather that Days of Future Past was melded to suit what has come before, or would you have rather that they had just ignored everything and started again? Like, what would you think is a better option at this point?
Honestly, I think the better option is to ignore everything. I think a clean break would have given the film the freedom to do what it needed to do. And it would have been more interesting. But because they've tried, like I said earlier, they've tried to have their cake and eat it. They've tried to reference these films and say that, yes, these things did happen. But at the end of the film, to simply throw them all out the window and say, actually, nah, it's fine. They didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know.
It is kind of remarkable that we have a superhero series that has started back in the day, well, not that long ago, but 14 years ago.
But as far as superhero films go, it is back in the day.
It is, that's right. Yeah. So back in the day when these films were just becoming successful, that they've managed to start off this series and it has carried through and survived without a major reboot or recreation, remake, whatever you want to call it. They have actually stuck to their guns, for better or worse, and put out a huge amount of films. I mean, including the Wolverine films. This is what, the 7th?
This is the 7th.
Yeah. So I think other studios, I mean, we saw what happened with Spider-Man, and that might have been due to contractual things, but it is kind of incredible that 14 years on, they have survived the origin and the middle ground, the Nolan grittiness, and they've come out the other end, all the while playing like the parallel universe to what Marvel has going on. They can't really break into that. It's strange that they've come that far, and they've come out with, I guess, mixed results, because they have such an incredibly complicated timeline now that they're going to. I mean, every film, if they're treating these films like trilogies, so the second one that we have now, Days of Future Past, if that is a middle one, so we get Apocalypse in 2016. Does that mean that are they going to have to go back in time again to have
Apocalypse
this cast?
is set in the 80s.
Okay, right. So we're having a trilogy of films where they've gone back to look at the origins.
Yeah, so that just confuses things further.
So it's really hard. I mean, they're kind of doing what Star Wars did with their prequel trilogy.
You're right, they are. And this is what I was thinking about. I was thinking to myself, like, I'm so angry at the fact that this prequel thing has upset the present films that we're used to. And I honestly think that George Lucas, even though he messed with a lot of stuff in regards to character motivation and stuff, I mean, he made, a bounty hunter like Greedo. He made him a tiny little kid playing on Tatooine with Anakin, which is just kind of stupid. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect that character that much. It's just a stupid thing that's a coincidence that probably wouldn't happen. It
fits a timeline still.
It does. And you're just like,
that pisses off everyone.
Yeah, you think that's dumb, but I guess it could happen. Whereas this film has gone beyond that. It's gone past dumb to things that it just undoes things that have happened. I mean, retconning is one thing, but just eradicating the entire timeline. I mean, I guess this is what Star Trek did, which was fine with me because I never saw the original Star Trek until recently, so I guess I didn't have the same attachment, but I invested in these X-Men films and I cared about these characters, and to know that all that's gone now and none of it mattered is really, it's a slap in the face. Like, I really wanted to enjoy the film, but because they took that route of just completely destroying that timeline and saying never happened. I mean, I can't get past it.
Yeah, okay. The thing I was talking about earlier on that I didn't like about the ending was I have always found it hard this portrayal of Magneto going between the good and the bad, and I've never really understood why it is when he turns bad. I mean, his ideologies are completely separate to everyone else. He believes that the world would be better off with that. He wants to eradicate mankind so that he can, the mutants can be free. I don't know. It does, that idea seems to work at points in the series and doesn't at others.
That's a good point.
It just sometimes it doesn't work. But what I didn't like about the ending was how he got metal. He put metal in these sentinels, in these primitive sentinels. But then all of a sudden he can, and this is another thing we're talking about with James after the film, is that all of a sudden he could control the
fiber optics.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's a master of things that are well above and beyond his domain. He's controlling a league of an electronic army. He's controlling all the guns and they're flying and stuff like that. And it was just
somehow he makes them hunt the other mutants, but also forgets to tell them not to hunt him.
Yeah, that's right.
That was really dumb at some point where he's just like, I probably should have done that. Since I have complete control of these creatures, I probably should have told them not to kill me.
Yeah,
but they go for him him at some point.
And what I thought actually, I thought that it was all of a sudden it was going to go very well, because I thought probably naively towards the end when he starts bringing in the Sentinels and they're shooting at the politicians and all that.
Well, they're shooting at cars.
Yeah, the cars. Well, that's right, and that was very key, because I thought if they're shooting at the cars, then maybe what he's doing is setting up a precedent saying we're going to avert the war because look what the Sentinels are doing. They're terrible. They could kill any of us, but I won't kill anyone. I'll shoot at the cars. Then I'll let them drop down and I'll walk away and I'll be a hero. I should have been a bad guy. Yeah, right. See, that's what I thought was making sense. But then I realized the longer that scene went on, actually he's just being the evil guy that's controlling stuff he shouldn't really be able to control. But I thought that was all of a sudden, I thought it was moving towards a climax that made sense.
Yeah, okay. The other problem with just simply being convenient with their powers, I mean, that also comes in the fall where they have the much lauded confrontation between the two Professor X's. So the idea that, I was sort of watching that scene just going, well, yeah, okay, so I guess the old Professor X can talk to young Professor X through Wolverine's brain 50 years in the past because that's what he can do now. It was just one of those things. Yeah. It was like Superman rebuilding the Great Wall of China using telekinesis because he can. It's like, well, we need him to do it, so he can just do it as one of his powers. You guys didn't know it was one of his powers? You guys are idiots.
Actually, speaking honestly, of that, how does Magneto just fly around? Does he have magnets in his gloves? And then
he's wearing a metal helmet.
No, but he can't fly off the helmet. We were talking about this before, off air. He was if he's using the helmet to fly around, his hat would just fall off.
He's using the metal around him to propel himself.
Okay, so that's what I thought the answer would be.
Because you remember when he jumps on the train?
Yeah,
he goes moving the metal. He brings himself to the train.
Yes,
because he's using the existing metal. He's not using metal on himself.
Yeah, okay. But then is there a limit? Like when he's underground, why couldn't he?
It depends on the scene, Dave. It depends on what the script needs.
That's exactly what I mean. I mean, it seems arbitrary. Arbitrary at the best of times.
I did enjoy the sequence when he took over the Sentinels, but it was also overridden by the fact that it was very stupid, because all of a sudden he was tearing apart metal girders and turning them into microbes that control robots. Like, they just go to the point where it's just like, we need him to do it, so just let him do it.
That's right. All of a sudden he's a smelter.
Not to mention a technician that knows exactly how these computers work that he's never met.
Yeah.
So that
was really the only time it lost me, though, was the final scene with Magneto. That was the point where I started to question things.
It just got muddled, didn't it?
It was a little too much.
So the fact that they didn't explain things like linking up from X-Men 3 to this one, the fact that they just steamrolled over that, I mean, I probably could forgive that if they didn't then go ahead and then just completely steamroll those films as well. Mm-hmm. It just didn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And also, one more thing, not the stinger, but the actual the final scene was rescuing Wolverine from the river, and you've got Stryker there, and I thought to myself, well, at least I know that Wolverine is still going to go through the process of getting the adamantium claws, because Stryker's going to turn him into Project X. Does this ring a bell from X-Men Origins Wolverine? Like, Stryker's the guy that actually fuses the adamantium to his skeleton.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So I was like, well,
but Stryker's also the guy from X2.
Yeah, played by Brian Cox.
But
he's older then, and that's different. Like, when he's younger...
Oh, that's right. So we have the younger version in Origins. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, yeah. Origins I saw quite a while ago.
Yeah, but so he's that guy. So the thing was, I was like, okay, if you're going to retcon everything, so how then is Wolverine going to get the adamantium skeleton? And it turns out that it looks like that storyline's going ahead. And then they have a flash of his eyes, and it turns out to be Mystique. So what the hell?
Oh, that's right.
What's going on with that? So is Mystique going to... Why does she want to give him adamantium claw? Like, it doesn't make...
Confusing the shit out of me.
It's like they're just getting too clever. It's like, why don't we show that this character is actually Mystique? And someone says, well, why? And they say, just cause. It's going to be an awesome way to finish the film. Like, cut to credits. Bam.
Yeah.
And there's that lone voice saying, but why?
So what would be the reason of having that is Mystique?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. And they don't explain it. It's just full of plot holes like this. Of like, that doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. So... obviously, I'm very agitated about this, and I wish I wasn't. I wish I could have just enjoyed the film like a normal human being, but I can't. This
just
film
like me.
Is terrible.
You just got to switch your brain off and sit back and expect the worst, and then be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, no, I was very excited, but it's funny because I was tempering my expectations as it was getting closer, because I was just thinking, wait a minute, how can they possibly fit all these characters into one film?
Yeah.
And amazingly enough, that wasn't the problem. They actually managed to divide the time between the characters really well.
Yeah, that did somehow work.
That was great, and that wasn't the issue. The issue was all the things I've mentioned. I'm not going to go over it again. But
well, it's everything we've been talking about. Yeah. Well, I am massively surprised. So I'm definitely on board for Apocalypse then. So I will be seeing another X-Men film.
Did you like the stinger with the pyramids?
I freaking loved it. I don't know anything about it. I just love. I'm always reading about pyramids and ancient unexplainable, like ancient astronaut theories and stuff like that.
God.
I love anything like that.
Awesome.
So if you can show me who built the pyramids,
Yep.
I will gladly watch.
Yeah, so like I said the other night, so Lord of the Rings bad, but pyramids being built by aliens good.
Why? What's the?
Because you were
what is the
saying
similarity?
you saying you can't get on board with fantasy.
Yeah.
Yet this works for you. You're excited about this.
Well, no. Okay.
I'm just talking about you're always talking about gritty realism and being and films you can relate to.
Yeah,
but it's just kind of funny that you're excited about the Apocalypse building the pyramids.
Well, it's because the pyramids are real, and no one knows how they built them. It's not
Slaves,
like Hobbiton
Dave.
is a
Everyone
real...
knows how they built them. Slaves.
Yeah.
Slaves
Actually,
built them.
This is way off topic now, but we've gone so far. There was a really interesting article that came out the other week about how the slaves would have slightly dampened the water in front of them so they could drag stones over it without them sinking, and that's how they think they transported the rocks to build the pyramids. Just saying.
So you didn't believe it before that?
No, of course I did. What? No, I don't honestly think that the aliens are building pyramids. I honestly think there is something in this ancient, the alien astronaut alien thing. Look, yeah, that's I love stuff like that. So when they showed the they go back into ancient times and there's a guy there building pyramids with
got his 4
hands.
horsemen.
That is inherently fascinating to me. I love stuff like that. So I don't know anything about it. I mean, is that you? Did you say the guys? That's Apocalypse?
Yeah, that's Apocalypse.
There's a guy called Apocalypse.
Yeah, that's his name.
Right, okay.
He's much bulkier in the comics. I assume that he's going to grow up to be a bit more...
Yeah, look very dweeby.
Yeah, from what I've seen, once again, not a big X-Men fan, but whenever I've seen Apocalypse depicted in artwork, he always looks like a DC character called Darkseid. So I don't know who came first, but I would hazard a guess. No, actually, I'm not going to...
But Darkseid has all the stuff on him, doesn't he? He wears armor, doesn't he?
But if you see a picture of Apocalypse, you'll be like, oh, that kind of looks like Darkseid. They are like big granite-looking guys, bulging muscles with very similar hair. Anyway, this is getting way too far into the geek, but
sure.
Basically, there's a lot of similarities, and apparently he's a big bad X-Men foe, and all the kids are very excited about this film. So
you got to say though, that's a pretty enticing teaser, don't you reckon?
Well, I liked it because it was so deep into the nerd thing. Because I mean, it's a teaser for fans of the book. Like everyone that's read...
No, but I'm not. It worked perfectly.
Okay, well, that's even better. But the point is, if you're an X-Men fan, you'll immediately recognize the character and you'll get excited. If you're just a cinema goer, you'll be like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
But there's a weird dude building pyramids.
I'm glad you dug at that. That's cool. But I think that stingers like that should be for the comic book fans. I like the fact that they're dropping Easter eggs just for those people, just to go, we're still there for you. Like at the end of the day, we're making these films because you love them. Yeah, and that's cool. Okay. So I'm excited for Apocalypse. As much as I was annoyed by the time travel, I can't think of the word, but it
was a tangled mess, I guess. The more you think
it was a big mess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go out saying that I actually, for once in my life, properly enjoyed an X-Men film.
I wish I could have enjoyed it as much as you did. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed our chat, and we will see you all next week.
I'm finished.